Crunch. You know that sound. Open a bag, reach inside, take one, and somehow half the bag has disappeared. Potato chips are now one of the simplest snacks imaginable. Potato, oil, salt. But behind that ordinary crunch is one of food history's greatest invention stories. According to the legend, the potato chip exists because one chef got angry. The story takes us to Saratoga Springs, New York in 1853. At the time, Saratoga Springs was a fashionable destination filled with wealthy visitors. Near Saratoga Lake stood a popular restaurant called Moon's Lake House, and working in its kitchen was a talented chef named George Crum. One day, according to the story, a wealthy customer ordered fried potatoes. The plate arrived, but the customer wasn't happy. The potatoes were too thick. Back they went. Crum sliced another batch thinner, fried them, sent them back. Still too thick. Back again. At this point, Crum supposedly became irritated. Fine, if this customer wanted thin potatoes, he was going to get the thinnest potatoes Crum could possibly make. Crum sliced the potatoes almost paper thin. He fried them until they became hard and crisp. Then he covered them with salt. The idea, according to the legend, was basically malicious compliance. Here, try eating these. The plate went out. The customer picked up one of the thin fried slices. Crunch. And instead of complaining, he loved it. Other customers began asking for them. Soon, the crispy potatoes became famous as Saratoga chips, and one of America's favorite snacks had supposedly been invented by accident. It's an incredible story. There's only one problem. Potato chips may already have existed. 36 years earlier, in 1817, an English doctor and cookbook writer named William Kitchener published a hugely successful cookbook called The Cook's Oracle. Inside was a recipe with a remarkably familiar idea. Potatoes were to be cut into thin slices or shavings and fried until crisp. In other words, something extremely close to a potato chip was written down decades before George Crum supposedly served his angry customer. And the mystery gets even stranger. In 1849, 4 years before the famous incident, a newspaper was already praising another Saratoga Springs cook named Eliza for her reputation at frying potatoes. So what exactly happened in 1853? The frustrating answer is we don't completely know. The story of the angry chef, the demanding customer, and the accidental potato chip became famous long after the supposed event. Later versions even identified the customer as Cornelius Vanderbilt, one of America's richest businessmen. But the evidence doesn't allow us to confidently say that George Crum invented the potato chip in one dramatic act of revenge. And yet, Crum still matters. A lot. Because inventing something and making something famous are not always the same thing. George Crum became one of Saratoga's celebrated cooks. Around 1860, he opened his own restaurant, and according to accounts of the restaurant, baskets of his crispy potato chips sat on the tables for customers. Saratoga chips became famous. People visiting the area encountered them. Restaurants copied them. The idea traveled. So George Crum may not have created the world's first thin-fried potato, but he appears to have helped turn it into something people remembered. And this raises an interesting question. Who invents a food? Is it the first person who ever makes it? The first person who writes the recipe? The person who improves it? The person who makes it famous? Or the person who figures out how to sell it to everyone? Because the potato chip still had a long way to go before it could become the snack sitting in your pantry today. For decades, potato chips remained relatively local. Some restaurants served them, small businesses made them. In 1895, an Ohio entrepreneur named William Tappenden began making chips in his kitchen. Eventually, he converted a barn into a small factory and delivered chips to local stores in barrels using a horse-drawn wagon. But potato chips had a problem. They're fragile. Put hundreds inside a barrel, and the ones at the bottom can become crumbs. Expose them to air, and they lose the thing that makes them special, the crunch. For potato chips to conquer America, they needed something that seems almost boring compared with an angry chef. They needed better packaging. Enter Laura Scudder. In California in 1926, Scudder began making potato chips. Instead of simply putting them into barrels or tins, she developed a better solution: wax paper. Her workers could form wax paper sheets into bags, seal them, fill them with chips, and close the package. The bags helped keep the chips fresher. They reduced crumbling. They made individual portions easier to sell. And suddenly, the potato chip had something incredibly important: a home, the bag. Think about how closely those two things are connected today. You don't normally picture potato chips sitting loose inside a wooden barrel. You picture the bag. You hear it opening. You reach inside without even looking. Packaging helped transform a fragile regional food into something much easier to distribute and sell. Then manufacturing expanded, distribution expanded, companies grew. Potato chips moved farther from the restaurants and kitchens where they had once been made in small batches. They entered grocery stores, lunches, parties, picnics, vending machines. Eventually, flavors multiplied. Salt was joined by new seasonings: barbecue, cheese and onion, salt and vinegar, sour cream and onion. And then flavors became increasingly connected to local tastes around the world. The simple fried potato had become a platform. Almost anything could be put on it. Today, walking down a snack aisle can feel like looking at an experiment in human imagination. But the most interesting thing about the potato chip might still be the story we tell about its beginning. An angry chef, a difficult customer, one sarcastically thin potato. Crunch, history made. It's almost perfect, and maybe that's exactly why the story survived. Humans love inventions that happen in one magical moment. Newton has his apple, Archimedes has his bathtub, and potato chips have George Crum and the impossible customer. But real history is usually messier. Thin fried potatoes existed before Crum. Other cooks were making them. Crum helped popularize them. Entrepreneurs figured out how to manufacture them. Laura Scudder helped solve the packaging problem. Factories figured out how to make enormous quantities. Marketers figured out how to sell them, and generations of snack makers kept changing them. So maybe asking who invented the potato chip isn't quite the right question. Maybe the better question is, how did such a simple idea become something the entire world wanted to crunch? And that answer doesn't belong to one chef. It belongs to hundreds of years of cooks, entrepreneurs, factories, inventions, and hungry customers. The next time you open a bag, listen. Crunch. That sound may not have begun with one angry chef in 1853, but the legend he became part of helped turn a thin fried potato into one of the world's great food stories. Because every bite has a story.